Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of The Truth Is, the podcast where we say the quiet parts out loud and tackle the truths that too often get glossed over. I'm your host, Tash, and today, the truth is, a title doesn't make you a leader. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone with manager, director, or even chief in their title, and they couldn't lead a team out of a paper bag? Titles might suggest authority, but they don't guarantee leadership. In fact, research by McKinsey found that only 25% of employees believe their organization's leadership is effective. 25%. That's it. So clearly, slapping a title on someone's LinkedIn isn't cutting it. Now, if you've ever worked under someone who had the title but none of the actual leadership, then you already know. Real leaders aren't made by promotions or job descriptions. They're made by how they show up, who they lift up, and the impact they have with or without a seat at the table. And I can't think of a better person to explore that with than today's guest and returning friend of the show, Daron Moore. We actually just saw each other last week at the HRA 25 conference in Austin, where we both took the main stage, me as the final panel of the day, and Daron brought us home as the closing keynote. And listen, y'all, I've been going to that conference for 4 years straight, and I'm not exaggerating when I say Daron's keynote was the best I've ever experienced. People were dancing, crying, fully present. It was equal parts vulnerable and personal and equal parts thought-provoking and actionable. It was everything you want from someone who doesn't just talk about leadership, but lives it. And if you're new to Daron, let me properly introduce him. He's an organizational and talent development strategist with a passion for building high-performing, people-centered cultures. Over his career, he's advised and developed leadership programs for startups, Fortune 500s, and everything in between, always with a focus on transformational leadership over transactional management. He's also the founder of The Reconnect, a consulting company that's focused on connecting organizations with the organisms that power them. Yes, the incredible people that fuel a business's success. And as I mentioned, he was a friend to the show. He was also on season 1 of this podcast for one of my all-time favorite episodes. The truth is, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So if you missed that one, go back and add it to your queue after this. But for now, Daron, welcome back to The Truth Is.
Thank you, Tosh. Sounds like you've done that once or twice before.
I mean, we are on episode, 14 now?
Yes, no, I appreciate it. Very humbling introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, I am so excited to ride the momentum coming off of that conference we were just at. There's nothing like being in a room full of people to really get you juiced and amped up. So let's get into it. Let's talk leadership today.
Let's talk leadership. And I echo everything you said. The event last week was everything it was cracked up to be. Met some great leaders, talked with great leaders. When you're able to have those conversations, leaders of people, you really start to have some eye-opening experience. So yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, let's get into it. And we'll start with the foundation, which is, how would you define real leadership without using the word title?
Leadership is our ability to take what we do socially and magnify it in what we do tactically. And the best leaders are able to do like 3 things extremely well: bring clarity, bring connection, and bring confidence. And if I put it in a formula, you have to add those things up: confidence, clarity, and connection. But there has to be an absence of certainty. So you can't see leadership when everything is certain and everything is 100%. Like there has to be some level of uncertainty. And I think that's the best way for me to define leadership because it shows up in the social aspects of how we interact with one another. And there has to be some absence of clarity, some absence of confidence, some absence of connection that that leader brings to bring it full circle.
I hadn't heard that one before. The absence of clarity. That's when the real leaders show up and they do their thing. And I really like that. So then tell me something. What is something you often see in real leaders, emphasis on real leaders here, that you rarely see in people who are leaders only by title? What are they doing differently?
Yeah, I think they're taking their role really personally. They have some stake in the position that they have outside of the title and have some level of accountability that that spans outside of the 9 to 5, right? So I have to be invested in a way that you feel and that you know. Great leaders are ones that don't necessarily even have to say it. They just show up and do it. You kind of feel it, you know it. You're drawn to great leaders. You're almost almost thinking that if I did not have this leader, my situation would be completely different. My circumstances or my role, my the perspective of that role would be different if that leader wasn't there. That's how you know you've had a really, really good leader there.
Yeah. And I also think you touched on it a bit, but leaders are the people that you naturally want to follow, not because they told you to follow them and they dictated you to follow them, but it's because they led by example, they were authentic or whatever it may be, that you felt this thing. It's like this natural gravitational pull that you're like, yeah, I'm going where they're going. They seem to be on the right path. They seem to bring clarity to an ambiguous situation, all of those things. And I've been in organizations where someone has a title and their team isn't engaged. The team isn't really getting on.
Yep.
And this person is like, I don't understand. You people need to follow me. Why aren't you doing what I'm saying? And I'm like, that's because you're not a proper leader. Leaders build trust, they communicate effectively. All of these things build a leader. And without them, it's just dictatorship, in my opinion.
That's right. Yeah. So clarity, connection, and confidence. Like that's the trifecta. Clarity, connection, and confidence. Some leaders have one, the best have all three. And I refrain from putting trust in there because trust makes it so complicated. Trust is so personal. It's so intimate. Like for you to trust somebody, like, I mean, there's people who have partners in their lives that they don't trust, right? So for me to trust my leader is hard. So I've learned over the years just to remove trust out of it because trust will be a byproduct of clarity, confidence, and connection, right? The more clarity that I have, the more confidence that I have, the more connection that I have, then I will get trust. If you go in trying to get trust, then you end up putting on this pony show and what can I do to earn your trust? And you're going through all these trainings about trust and it blows out of the water. Focus on being clear, connecting with people and building their confidence, and then trust will be a byproduct of it.
You see that, y'all? I'm getting schooled on my podcast. I love this. Yeah, take the trust out of it. Fine. I don't trust my leader.
Just don't try to do it. Don't try to build trust. Like if you try to build trust, it's just manufactured.
Totally.
It becomes hard for someone to follow, knowing that you're trying to build trust. Because now my guard automatically comes up. Like I want you to trust me. If I came to you and says, Tash, I want you to trust me, automatically the red flags come up. Like what? Trust you to do what? Just bring clarity to my role, right? Make me confident about my role and just connect with me on a level that's outside of just transaction. I think you said transformations over transactions. Yeah, that type of feel, trust will then come after that.
Love it. Love it. So, Daron.
Yes.
Why do you think companies so often mistake giving someone a title for actually developing them into a leader?
I think a couple of reasons. One, I think companies understand how critical it is to have the leader in your organization. The top of the org can only do so much, right? Their reach is only so far. So the idea of having leaders implemented throughout your organization is the only way that that vision and purpose and values can all trickle down. But I also think that organizations think that they don't have the time to develop a leader in the way that that organization needs it. Because frankly, it takes a while to develop leadership. It's not something that I go back and forth on whether there are natural born leaders or it's something that you have to be groomed into. I think there's a magical algorithm. I don't know what the mixture is, but there's definitely something to be said about someone who has experience. Quite often, unfortunately, that experience has nothing to do with leadership, right? We promote people for the job that they've done, not the job that we anticipate them to do. But what's the alternative, right? The alternative is to bring someone in from the outside who already has leadership experience, but then you miss them understanding what it means to be a leader at that org, right? If you bring someone from the ground up who's worked all the way through the system, they may not have the intangibles that are needed to manage, right? There's different dynamics. So it's extremely tricky. But I think primarily most of the time organizations just don't have the time or resources to invest in building the leader in the way that they need to.
Yeah, you also touched on something, which is that balance between should I internally promote someone? Should I bring someone from the outside with the experience? Has there been in your experience a situation where someone was promoted too early or maybe shouldn't have been promoted at all and it actually caused
Me.
real
I've taken promotions that I know for a fact I had no business taking, primarily because it's the next step up, right? I've done enough to impress the people around me to say that he's ready for the next role, but I just wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared to deal with the dynamics of like managing people who are older than me. I wasn't prepared to say no and put up resistance when something was asked. I wasn't prepared to I want to say discipline or correct to give some corrective action, right? There's a level of maturity that's required that I don't think that I had early on in my career, that over time I had to kind of build that muscle and to know how to do that effectively. And the organization frankly suffered because of it. But I think the difference between organizations who are okay with that suffering and the ones who are not is the difference between the success that they have with the leaders that they bring on.
So then it's like if things are going a bit sideways when you promote someone early, when do you look at that potential access, right? When you look at that 9-box grid for all the HR people out
Yeah.
there, there's performance and there's potential, and you kind of map somebody out. So when do you really lean into the potential of it? Because maybe in that exact moment when you were promoted, you weren't ready to do all of those things. And maybe I'm going to plug your other panel at the conference. Maybe it's a little bit of imposter syndrome that gets thrown into the mix with it. At what point is it we see something in this individual? Maybe you do have that recipe where you were born with natural leadership abilities, but you also need someone to invest in the development to give you the things that you haven't been exposed to. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's the best way I can just to come back to HRA, it's and the music theme that I have for the closing keynote, it's do I have a one-hit wonder or do I have a megastar? Right. And I think we want the megastar and we're terrified of the one-hit wonder. And that can only be kind of clarified through demonstration. Like there has to be something demonstrable for anyone with potential to move to that next box. So there's whether it's project based, you need to lead a project for 6 months, or you need to have a certain QBR score, or whatever that metric is. There has to be something that says, okay, he's demonstrated that there's I see the potential there, but what do I have tangible next to me outside of just warm, fuzzy feelings to show that they can do it? And if they don't, develop a plan so they can do that, whether that's mentorship, whether that's shadowing or dilos, day in the life of. Maybe there's structured on the job training that happens, but there needs to be something demonstrable for that leader to say, all right, I'm ready to move from one box to the next.
Yeah. I think I spoke about this on one of my other episodes, but when you're stretched outside of your comfort zone, you're given a task that I'm like, I don't know if I'm exactly qualified, if we're being all the way real, to do these things that I'm being asked to do. But when you shift your mindset from being scared of taking on these new challenges to, okay, let me be curious about this. Let me seek out the opportunities for growth. Let me seek out the mentorship. Let me go do some research. It actually challenges you and stretches you in ways you didn't think were possible. And on the other side of it, I delivered on things that were outside of my wildest imagination and got to continue to grow in my career. So I think there is a fine balance between you're maybe not completely ready for this, but I see that thing in you, and I believe that you can rise to this occasion.
There's just, the reality is there's just a small window where that environment is conducive for me to go try some things. But most of the time, most organizations are like, we got to go. Like the stakes are too high to mess this up, and we feel that pressure as leaders. So again, to go back to imposter syndrome, we either like fake it till we make it, or we curl up in a ball and run and hide and cry, or what happens. But I wish that we could have a corporate environment where leaders could fail and experiment and grow and develop, and it'd be okay. But that's often not the reality that we live in. So like, what do we tell the high potential who is ready, they've demonstrated, but we're like 9 months out of a merger that we can't really promote you right now? What do we do then? Like, how do we navigate that? That's hard to do.
Don't you love the environments or the organizations that have the value of fail forward? I
Oh,
love this. It's, oh, we're going to fail forward. I'm like, psych, we're not actually. I'm not
that's
going to
right.
have the chance to do so because things are changing too quickly. And like you said, we don't have the time for development. We don't have the time to do that. We need somebody today with the experience who's done this before. It's kind of a
Yeah,
double-edged sword sometimes.
yeah, it's tough. And the situations that I've run into the most is the leaders who have all the influence in the world while everyone is in the room. But as soon as he or she leaves out of that room, the culture goes right back down. Right? It's like we know what to say, we know all the right things to do when they're there, but great leaders leave that impression on the room, whether they're in the room or not. Right? There's has to be some level of influence that permeates outside of me having to go. Otherwise, that leader gets burnt out trying to, all right, I got to go here, I got to go there, I got to go there, trying to really change the culture. Or if there has to be a way for that leader to implement the vision that they have, that clarity, the confidence, whether they're in the room or not.
Totally. Leaders need to clone and create more leaders
Yeah,
because you can't just have one really great leader in your organization. Like you said, they will burn out, right? Depends on what size your organization is, but
sure.
typically it's not enough to lead a scaling, growing stage organization with one superstar leader. You need to create them. And that's why I do love mentorship. I do love environments where those leaders can meet with other emerging leaders in the organization, build that next generation from within. It's not always possible, but I love the environments in which people share their knowledge, they share the
Yep.
tips. And I do also agree with you in that some people are just born with it, but you can teach these things and people can grow into it. You just have to
100%.
be willing and open to that.
And the ones who need to be taught often end up being some of the best leaders because the intangibles that they do have are often the ones that the natural leaders lack. All right. For example, I was considered a natural leader. People like to come around me and have good energy and positivity, but I sucked at project management, right? I did not want to manage projects. I don't like the micromanaging piece of it. So being not good at that early on made me realize like that's something I really need to develop in order to keep the momentum. I have to manage projects so I don't have to feel like I go in every room and have one-on-ones with my team of 20 folks and not able to get to my job because I wasn't able to manage my skill set very well.
So we've been talking about the traits of a good leader, right?
Yeah.
Now it's time for my favorite part of today's episode, which is the build your boss portion. Okay. Do you remember Build-A-Bear? Anyone listening remember Build-A-Bear? You would go to the mall and you would pick out this unfluffed stuffed animal and then you'd fill it up. Then you would pick out its clothes and dress it up. Then you would go and this bear would come home in a nice box. Man, those were the days. So what we're going to do today is basically build our perfect or ideal boss. Okay. But
build a boss.
Build a boss. And we're only allowed to choose 3 must-have leadership traits, okay?
I can choose from anywhere?
You can choose from anywhere. I'm not going to give you a list or anything to select from. These are just the 3 must-have leadership traits, in your opinion, to make your perfect or ideal boss.
In any order?
In any order, yeah.
Okay, all right.
In any order. You want to kick us off?
No, I was making sure I didn't have to rank them in order of priority. Okay.
Okay, I'll kick us off. Us off. Okay, so my 3 picks are authenticity, strong communicator, and effective decision maker. And I'll give you my whys because I'm sure you were just about to.
You know it's coming. You know it's coming.
So authenticity. I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to follow someone who only sticks to a script and is very mechanical about things. So much is changing in our world day to day. We went through a pandemic. So much has shifted that I really appreciate a leader who is able to come and say, I'm not expecting someone to have all the answers, right?
Sure.
I'm expecting someone to show up in the good times and in the bad times and say, hey, this is what we're doing. I don't know. We're working through this. For someone to be authentic in that way, instead of to try to put on and be this person who has all the answers, etc., that's never really worked out in my experience with a leader. 2, strong communicator. That's just a given to me. As an effective leader, you have to be able to communicate, again, through the good times and the bad. People want clarity, and clarity is bred through effective communication. And then the last one, being an effective decision maker. One more time, you don't have to have all of the answers. I don't expect any leader to know everything about every department in the organization. But when you build a team and you hire the right people who are experts in, their space, once you have the information to be able to make a decision and lead us forward, tell us what the vision is, where we're going, what we're doing, I think that's really critical to business success. And I've seen leaders that cannot make a decision, or they do and then point blame at everybody else. You need to be able to make the decision, stick with it, say this was my decision. It was either good or bad, own it, and let's move on.
I like that. I like those. Those are good choices. Mine are similar. I'm going to start with self-awareness. I think a great leader is self-aware. That tells me a lot about their ability to lead a group when they've taken that courageous journey to kind of explore themselves, and they understand what their limits are, they understand what their triggers are, and they're able to courageously communicate that. Like they can talk about difficult things very well. They're not afraid to have tough conversations or address elephants in the room. They are really, really good about having those uncomfortable conversations. And then the last one is, I think a great leader uncaps talent. Like they have this way of finding unique abilities in their team members and magnifying them, or like when you are able to discover your ability to do something really well for the first time, it's an amazing, amazing feeling. And to have a leader kind of facilitate that, like you have this now connection with them that it's hard to break, right? They see something in you. It's more than just calling it out. Like you could really be great at X, Y, or Z, but they position you in a way to uncap that and open up your repertoire of skills. And now you're thinking differently about what your possibilities are. Like a leader that can do that in their team is tremendous. So they can uncap potential. That's probably the third characteristic in a great leader for me.
Ooh, I like that. Uncap potential on others. I want these leaders everywhere I go. Can we just clone these leaders?
Let's build the boss. Let's do that.
Build these bosses and then go and put them in all of the organizations. That would be fantastic.
They would make a lot of money for sure.
All right. I'll get to work on this. If you notice though, Daron, none of what we picked had anything to do with a job title. It didn't have anything to do with years of experience or seniority. It was all behavior based. So let me ask you another question. As we were talking about some of these that naturally come to us versus some that we have to work on, which of your picks do you think is the hardest to develop if someone doesn't naturally have it?
Self-awareness, for sure. Self-awareness. That journey can be a dark and scary journey of really looking yourself in the mirror and being okay with not being perfect or not being great at certain things. Again, the leaders that I know have this responsibility, and there's a lot of pressure that goes into that. And for you to acknowledge the cracks in your foundation and be okay with that is not easy. And I really think that's why a lot of C-level leaders struggle. Like when I have my coaching sessions with the C-suite and we're talking about opportunities for them, they haven't really taken a long look in the mirror, because as a leader, especially if they've been a leader for a long time, everyone tells you how great you are and what you do extremely well. And very few people are courageous enough to tell you where you're not good at. And the ones who are able to do that are usually the HR folks, right?
Yep, that's us.
It's usually the HR
we're telling
folks,
y'all.
right? But we become their best friends. We become their biggest asset when we can pull them to the side and say, Cliff, you're killing me right now. Like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You cannot say that, right? Right. Bringing them back into earth. Like that balance is what's needed. And I think not having that, be able to do that on your own, with self-awareness is a detriment to a lot of leaders. So self-awareness for sure. What about you? Would you say yours?
Well, it's interesting because I think self-awareness ties in for me to the authenticity piece of it. It's the authenticity, the vulnerability, to be able, like you said, to look in the mirror, to really reflect on how you're showing up every day for your teammates, for your organization, for whatever else. And then to be able to sit in that and lead with that. It's like if you've identified something that maybe isn't your strong suit, some will go to immediately hiding that. We're not going to talk about it. Like, I'm just going to go over here in the corner and try to fix it. I have found, at least in my leadership style and what's resonated with teams that I've led, is that piece exactly of, Tosh, you don't sugarcoat it. If you don't know the thing, it's okay. And that kind of creates a safe space. And so I really like that the two of them are linked, because you have to be self-aware enough to say, I don't know this thing, or that's not my strong suit. And then you have to be authentic or vulnerable enough to be like, it's okay if I say this out loud. It's okay if my direct reports or my team knows that I am a flawed individual or I don't have all of the answer, because for me as a leader, I'm also learning from my team. So when I open that up, maybe somebody on the team has an answer or has something that they can teach me and can fill in my gaps. But if I don't say it out loud and acknowledge what my gaps are, how am I going to have them filled?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The other question I have related to this is, which one of these things do you think gets overlooked the most when companies are hiring or promoting out of those traits that we just discussed?
Probably uncapping talent, because that's hard to put onto a resume, right? Like, it's hard to, you might have, 30% of my team got promotions in the last year, but does that really mean that you uncapped their talent? Not really, right? You're going to get those usually in the recommendation section of their LinkedIn, because they're going to say, this is the greatest leader I've ever had, right? It's something that when an organization brings me on to do consulting or to do some fractional work, I let them know that the best thing that they can do is find the person that's going to be after me, that's going to pick up the momentum when I leave. And so my ability as a leader, I know that I have a finite amount of time in that role. I'm not going to be there forever, especially these days. I'm probably going to be there 1.5 to 3 years, right? After that, if I've done my job and I leave an impression that I'm confident, I know that I have, once I leave, it creates a gap and a void. And it's very, very difficult to fill that void if I personally haven't gone and tried to find other people to come and fill that in behind me. So I have to be intentional about filling in those gaps by uncapping the talent of those around me, of my team members, of my colleagues. And it's just not the people that report to me, it's the people that I work with too. Like, I want to uncap potential so new possibilities are opened up all around me. And I don't know if you can get that in the interview process.
That is true. And I'm trying to think about, I'm like, how would somebody talk about this, right? How would you explain that you have tapped or uncapped someone's potential? The only thing that I can think of is in a startup that I once worked, there was a really strong performer on the team, but she hated her department. She went to school, she studied this thing, then she joined it, and she was like, I absolutely do not like this. And so she came to me, and I was the head of HR, and she was like, I'm turning in my notice and I'm leaving. And I was like, I've heard only great things from your manager. I'm kind of like, well, what can we do? And she was like, no, I just truly hate X department. It's just not the thing for me. And I'm like, okay, so I need someone on my team. Maybe you want to give people a chance, come and work with me, let me mentor you. And she was like, okay, fine. And she gave me the chance, and it was like we uncovered what she was meant to do. Right. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, there is something so special about that when you tap into that thing that the person is great at, is passionate about, etc. And it's like, wow, she really flourished. And no, she didn't get promoted because she got promoted because we tapped into the thing that she really excelled at. And it was beautiful to watch.
That's the interesting thing about organization dynamics, is that the people who are great at their role are not normally known for being great by anything on their job description. Like, it's the things that they do outside of that. Whether you're a great sales leader, it has nothing to do with your numbers, but it's how you run your team. If you're an HR, it's about how your one-on-ones go or how empathetic you are. It's the things that what makes you valuable, and you should be able to take that person and move them around at different parts of your organization, and they have an impact and influence in a way without even being the subject matter expert. Like, I don't know fintech or veterinarians. I don't know any of that stuff to go make an impact. And that's the beauty about what we do specifically in HR, because that common thread is the people aspect of it, and get good with that. And then you should have job security, but we know how that goes.
Ooh-wee. Don't talk
New
to
subject,
me.
new podcast.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another day in today's job market. Let me flip the script real quick. Tell me about a time you saw someone without a fancy title. This isn't a director, a VP, a chief of anything, lead in a powerful way. When did someone on a team who was just an individual contributor maybe do something that you were like, that's a leader?
Yeah. Great example. This is actually recent. So I was at an offsite with the senior leadership team, and it was brand new senior leadership team of leaders that were nominated by the C-suite to kind of be that second level, more tactical level. And this senior leadership team is a global organization. No one knew each other at all. They've only communicated via Skype, they were using Skype, or email, and maybe a few Zooms, but they've never met. And after our workshop, one of the things that we came up with, that one of the senior members suggested that we give to the C-suite, were something called cold showers. So every meeting would end with a cold shower, whether it was a one-on-one, a QBR, an all-hands meeting. And the cold shower was meant to kind of make you aware of something, wake you up. And it didn't necessarily have to be, actually, they didn't want it to be good news per se, but kind of something that like, hey, we wanted to make you aware that this is happening. And it created this feedback loop in the organization, because everyone was now expecting to have cold showers in their meetings. Like, I'm going to get something. And it took away kind of the sting of feedback by making it an expectation of how we communicate it. And that idea came, and it completely changed how that senior leadership team talked with one another over time, right? Because getting to know each other right off the bat, when we start to meet, we're going to have cold showers. Hey, your department's really slow on getting back on this to this, or, stuff that you normally wouldn't say upon meeting somebody for the first time, but the expectation was there, and it changed. It was one of those ways for them to be more human. Like, let's talk about it. Like, let's have a discussion now that we know that that's going to be on the table. So that's the first idea that came to mind. Like, someone creating some change in the org by just saying, can we implement the cold showers? And it's like, that's a fantastic idea. Yeah.
For a second, I was like, okay, was the team going to the locker room and everyone was going to take a cold shower, or we're going to pour some ice over everyone's head? I like that. I like that a lot. I think it's exactly what you said earlier, and that a lot of leaders only hear the things that they do really well and everybody hypes them up. But even when we think about the upward feedback, it's very difficult for someone on a team to give their manager or their leader feedback, because whatever, their fear of retribution or all of the things. But to have an environment where it's welcome, encouraged, etc., and you build that muscle of, I'm going to hear the things that maybe I'm not
that's right.
hitting the mark on. That's great. And keeping that open feedback loop. I need to start implementing some cold showers where I'm at.
Yeah. And it started to say we were going to do it at our annual reviews, but getting a cold shower once a year, you're probably going to stink, right? So you need to do it more frequently. So it was one-on-ones, it was QBRs, it was all hands meetings. Like, we implemented it every single time that we were going to have a one-on-one to one. And we changed the name from one on one to 1-2-1. Just a little tweak in language. A one-on-one, like, if you're that's a fight. Like, we're gonna fight one-on-one. Like, there's going to be some level of confrontation. Like, we need to talk to each other 1-2-1. So they changed that language and implemented cold showers.
I'm also just thinking about the first time I did a cold plunge, and it shocks your system, it shocks the body. I also run cold, so I was like, this is actually burning my extremities off. What is happening here? But the more you do it, the more you do those cold plunges on a regular basis, it doesn't affect you in the same way anymore. It's still very healthy for you. It's still,
and it still stings, but the benefits, you benefit from it. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Oh, I like that. I really
Yeah.
do. Now, Daron, we've been talking a lot about what good leadership looks like. What about bad leadership? Because sometimes that's just as important as knowing what good leadership is. So tell me, what's the biggest mistake you see when people try to lead based only on their title?
Not feeling like development is part of their responsibility. I've been a part of a lot of organizations, especially with the background in L&D, where that's the trainer's job, right? You get these requests and say, so-and-so needs training on X, Y, or Z, right? No, that's really your job, leader, to groom and develop those things. Again, easier said than done because the leader has so much on their plate already that it's hard to expect them to do so many different things. But prioritizing the development of your team, I think, is one of the top priorities of any leader, right? You might have some management responsibilities, but one of your leadership responsibilities is, uncapping talent, right? Uncapping potential. And you do that through intentional development. And I don't think enough leaders do that.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I know we've all been in an organization where they punt the development off to the people team, and I'm like, actually, no. Here's where we're gonna have a lesson on leadership.
That's right.
Lesson on this is what your role is. So that's a really good one. Throw in another stat here for the listeners. According to Gallup, managers account for at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement scores. And in other words, whether we stay, we thrive, or we leave, it's usually because of who's leading us, not the perks or the paycheck, though we all want those things too.
I don't mind those.
But I would take a great leader alongside a fat paycheck and some wonderful benefits. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Please double up.
Okay. I have a fun one to round us out because this is always what we do on this podcast, Daron. We're going to do a lightning round. It's what I like to call rapid fire truths.
Rapid fire truths. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a question, and you're just going to give me the first thing that comes to your head, okay? Don't think about it too much. Don't try to filter yourself. Just the first thing that comes to your head.
Unfiltered truths. All right.
Unfiltered truths, and they're rapid fire. So here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
The worst thing a leader can say.
It's not my job.
Best leadership advice you've ever gotten.
Be you.
And one book every aspiring leader should read.
The Coaching Habit. I can't remember the author.
We'll put it in the description.
Very, very thorough book on having coaching sessions. Like we talk about developing your team. That Coaching Habit can give you can coach your team members in 10 minutes or less. It doesn't have to be this whole burdensome thing, and there's frameworks that you can use to make it work. The Coaching Habit. Yeah.
Love that. We'll include the details in the episode description on that book. And then lastly, most important thing you learned after your first leadership role.
Money isn't everything.
Ooh, but it's something.
it's most of it, but it's not everything. It's not everything.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for indulging me. That was a great round of rapid fire truths, and so good. Honestly, it proves our truth today, which is that you don't need a title to lead. What you need is courage, clarity, and character. And finally, you know how this goes since you've been on before, but I close out every show by asking all of my guests to answer this same question. If leaders remember only one thing from this conversation today, Daron, what should it be? And bonus points if you can frame it in the truth is format, meaning the truth is ... finish the statement.
Like bonus points. The truth is, if you need a title to be a leader, you're not ready.
If you need a title to be a leader, you are not ready. Get out of the building, turn around, go back home, go to bed, try again.
Try again tomorrow.
I absolutely love that. That is so good. Yeah. Wow. Well, Daron, again, having you on is one of my favorite things. You are a special a special leader, special podcast guest, and honestly, just a pro in what you do. So thank you so much for showing up and sharing this conversation with me today. If listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn. Message me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect, and Tash, I'm super excited for you and all the future chapters you've had, episode 14, 15, whatever. You got something good here. Keep it up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And to you, our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of The Truth Is. Remember, a title doesn't make a leader, so keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with or without a title. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, leave a review, and share with your friends. And as always, I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to connect with me directly on LinkedIn, Natasha Bukhari, PHR, or send an email to ttiwithtosh@gmail.com. Until next time, stay awesome, stay authentic, and above all, stay true to yourself. This is your girl Tosh, signing off.